So each Saturday, I'm going to be reviewing an episode of Tangled the series. But before we do that, I have to get the movie out of the way and the TV movie out of the way. So this is the movie right here. This is actually one of the most expensive Disney movies ever made because of the amount of detail and hard effort it was to create Rapunzel's hair. If you don't know, animation is a really hard process, but also hair is the worst thing to animate, and they animated this hair incredibly realistically. And it on the back of this cover, it actually says 70 feet of magical golden hair, and they have to animate every strand of hair one by one, and then they have to animate it moving for extensive long periods of time within this movie. Geez, no wonder I understand now why they cut her hair. um, but it's a big deal, right? And so that this makes it one of the most expensive animated movies, and I think the animation in this movie is something really great. Almost every single Disney movie has straight up gorgeous animation. The only one I can think of that doesn't is like Chicken Little, but even then, that wasn't like, oh, that movie's. Well, I guess a lot of that movie was pretty ugly, but this one is beautiful. The animation's gorgeous. The scenery, the colors, everything's so vibrant. Um, and this is a really great take on the classic fairy tale of Rapunzel. I don't think this is one of the better Disney movies. I think it's one of the better modern ones. Like, I mean, I still think there's like one that's better than this, which is Zootopia. But and I think Big Hero 6 has some really great elements, but it's not better than this one. I think Tangled is just kind of one of those movies where it's like, okay, I think a lot of people liked it more when it came out because, well, it was a return to Disney's kind of fairy tale thing. Basically, there was the Disney Renaissance. Disney Renaissance, classic great movies. Lion King, Beauty and the Beast. Like, it was year by year, Disney was making top tier movies, like the best animated movies of the year, and they would get Oscar buzz. They got incredible recognition, incredible merchandise sales, soundtracks, everything. It was a big deal for Disney. It really brought them back and made them a multi-billion-dollar company and helped them get to where they are now. But then there was a period in the early 2000s where all that stopped. A lot of the people who helped create the Disney Renaissance had left, and so they were working on these newer projects, and they didn't quite work out. Treasure Planet bombed, Atlantis bombed, and so the first step they went back was Princess and the Frog back in 2009. Now, that was traditionally animated, which no other major studio, like, of course, anime and other studios, had released stuff like that, but for the most part, no other major animation studio was releasing 2D animation stuff. And it and so that movie, it happened. Like, it came out and it did okay. And then there was the Winnie the Pooh movie the year after that, or actually a couple years after. I think it was 2011, which also kind of just it made money, but like, that's it. It was kind of disappointing, and it happened. People saw it, but it was just kind of like that's there now, you know. Um, and so you know, for Disney, this was a really big game changer. But I think that's why more people like this movie in retrospect than probably people have rewatched it. I think that's why it's kind of one of the lesser known Disney movies um, of the modern era, at least. And and I think that's not to say this film is bad or unrewatchable. I think it's actually a very rewatchable movie. It's very funny, like the animation, the voice acting. Zachary Levi, who is, you best know him nowadays as Shazam. Mandy Moore, who's not really in anything anymore um, that I can think of. But she's great as Rapunzel. The voice acting here is great, and so I think the comedic delivery here in this movie is fantastic, especially from Zachary Levi. and I think that's why this movie is rewatchable. It's also just a fun adventure movie. I think the weakest element of this movie is the music, and I'm not to say like the music is bad. I think it's just when I think of the great Disney songs, I don't think of the movies from this one. The one I think of is for as great from this movie is "Can You See the Light," but it doesn't feel to me like a great Disney song. It feels like a very like, hey, this is a song that you could play on the radio. Like, it doesn't feel like it feels like just kind of a generic pop song, a really good one at that, but it just does not feel like a Disney classic song. And so I think a lot of this movie music is just kind of like forgettable or just okay. And that's not to say it's bad or it's poorly composed or anything like that. It is very well done in a lot of aspects, but I just don't think it's like the best. I think some people are like, I really hate Frozen. I'm gonna compare it to this movie. Like Frozen is just bad. I think this was just great compared to that, but like they're not similar at all, except they're both Disney movies with princesses, and yeah, but they're not similar at all. I guess they both feature magical girls. Oh well, okay. You know what? but they're not very similar. I don't see the point in comparing them. Um, I think this is kind of sad that that's the more well-known movie because this is the better movie. I think Frozen's just horrible, but this one is great, and I love this movie a lot. And I cannot wait to revisit Tangled the series. I think this was. I haven't seen every episode of that show. I've seen a few episodes, and I'm gonna really excited to watch that show. But I think more people should watch this movie and be aware of its existence. I think it's kind of weird that this is just kind of the lesser known out of the newer era. I think because to me, I feel like Moana, Frozen 2, Big Hero 6, Rock Breaks the Internet. I think that stuff is a lot more forgettable than this movie. Not to say all of those are bad, though 3 of those are. um, I'd say Ralph Breaks the Internet and Frozen 2 are bad. Um, and Frozen. But the rest of them, are pretty decent. And, I think, I think this is just a solid movie. It's not a great movie, but I think the world, the characters are fleshed out enough in this movie that it is kind of interesting that they turned it into a series because it kind of makes sense. And I think that's a great part about this movie. And I cannot wait to revisit the series. So join me next week as we talk about the Tangled movie, Tangled Ever After.